I never thought a simple coffee run could turn into one of the most awkward moments of my life. I was standing in line at the little cafe near my kid's school, juggling a toddler on my hip and trying to figure out how to order a latte with one hand. My son, Jamie, was busy staring at the display of chocolate croissants, completely ignoring me. That's when I noticed her. She was sitting at a corner table, sunlight streaming through the window and catching her hair just right, making it glow like it had its own little halo. I couldn't help but stare for a second too long. She looked up and caught my eyes. She smiled, a small, knowing smile, like she could read all the chaos in my life and still find it amusing. My heart skipped, and suddenly I felt every bit of exhaustion from parenting melt away, replaced by something I hadn't felt in a long time: curiosity about someone else. I tried to focus on Jamie's demands, but I couldn't stop glancing back. Every time I looked, she was looking back, and I started to feel this ridiculous pull, a magnetic tug that made me want to just go over and talk to her. Finally, when the line moved forward, I took a deep breath and decided to make a joke. "Hey," I said, trying to sound casual, "if I asked you out, would you laugh or call security?" She raised an eyebrow, and for a second my heart jumped. Then she laughed, a light, melodic laugh that made my chest tighten. "I might laugh," she said, "but it depends." "Depends on what?" I asked, trying to sound confident while secretly feeling like a nervous teenager. Her eyes sparkled with mischief. "Depends on your age," she said. That's when my brain froze. Age? Age? I mean, I know I'm a single dad. I know I look older than some guys my age because of Jamie and, well, life. But her question hit me like a punch. I opened my mouth, closed it, opened it again. Nothing came out. I could feel Jamie tugging on my jacket, probably wondering why Daddy suddenly looked like he'd seen a ghost. I managed to start, my voice cracking slightly. I mean, I'm old enough? I tried to laugh it off, but it sounded more like a squeak. She tilted her head and smiled, clearly enjoying my panic. "You're not that old," she said gently. "I was just making sure you know I don't date men with gray hair yet." I looked down at my hair in the fluorescent light and realized a few stubborn silver strands had probably decided to show up this morning. My face heated up. I laughed nervously, feeling a mix of embarrassment and something else, something I couldn't quite name, but it felt like hope. "I'll survive," I said, trying to play it cool. "I just didn't expect to get grilled on my age before I even bought a coffee." She laughed again, and I swear it was the most intoxicating sound I'd ever heard. "Dangerous? How?" I asked, leaning slightly closer. "Because you're juggling kids and life and somehow still manage to be charming," she said, her eyes meeting mine in a way that made my stomach do flips. I wasn't sure whether to laugh or panic, so I did a little of both. Jamie, oblivious to our conversation, tugged at my hand and demanded a chocolate croissant. I sighed dramatically. "Fine, we'll get the croissant, but you'll owe me one for this coffee conversation." She laughed softly, a hint of amusement lingering in her eyes as she watched us. And just like that, my carefully constructed facade of calm single-dad confidence melted away. I realized that I didn't just want to joke around with her. I wanted to know her, to ask her more than just a silly question. But how? How do you start talking to someone when your last relationship ended in chaos and you're carrying the weight of a kid on your hip? I stared at her across the cafe, and in that moment I decided that whatever embarrassment I felt about my age or my awkwardness, I was going to take a small leap. Maybe this coffee run was just a small, silly beginning. Maybe it could be more. And then she waved at me. Just a small wave, but my heart jumped. I waved back, fumbling with Jamie as if I just made a fool of myself. She smiled, and I knew this was only the start of something complicated but thrilling, something that might just turn my life upside down in the best way. The next day, I couldn't stop thinking about her. I found myself walking past that same cafe, even though Jamie and I didn't really need anything. I told myself it was just a coincidence, that it was harmless. But deep down, I hoped she'd be there again. And she was, sitting in the same corner, sipping her coffee, scrolling through her phone. Sunlight caught her hair the same way, making it shine. My heart did a stupid little flip, and I realized I was smiling like an idiot. I wanted to go over, wanted to say something clever, or at least sound confident, but I froze at the door, taking a deep breath. I couldn't let her see how nervous I was. Single dad, strong, calm. That was the image I wanted her to have, not the dad who almost tripped over his own feet yesterday. Jamie tugged at my hand again. "Daddy, can we sit there?" he asked, pointing to a table near her. I looked at her, and she caught my eye, giving me a small nod. That tiny gesture felt like permission, and I felt a rush of courage. I guided Jamie to a table near hers, pretending to read the menu while sneaking glances at her. She looked up and smiled, this time a little warmer. "Hey, you survived yesterday," she teased. "I did," I said, trying to sound casual. "Barely. It was a close call." She laughed softly, and I realized I could listen to that sound forever. We started talking, small talk at first, about the cafe, about Jamie, about the neighborhood. But soon the conversation slipped into something more personal. She told me about her job as a graphic designer, how she loved painting on weekends, and how she'd moved to the city for a fresh start. I told her about Jamie, about how being a single dad was the hardest thing I'd ever done, but also the most rewarding. Somewhere between sips of coffee and quiet laughter, I found myself leaning closer. Her eyes caught mine, and suddenly everything else, the world, the noise, even Jamie asking for more chocolate, disappeared. I wanted to reach out, to touch her hand, but I stopped. Not because I didn't want to, but because I didn't want to scare her. Then she said something that made my heart freeze in a different way. "So, how old are you, really?" Her voice was gentle, curious, but that question, it cut deeper than yesterday. I froze. My mind raced. I knew she was trying to be playful, but I could feel the weight behind it. I laughed nervously, rubbing the back of my neck. "Old enough to survive a coffee interrogation, I guess." She tilted her head, looking at me like she was studying me. "I'm serious," she said softly. "I just want to know more about you." I swallowed hard. I wanted to be honest. I wanted to tell her that age didn't define me, that being a father had changed me in ways that numbers could never capture. But saying it out loud felt impossible. I shifted in my chair, my heart pounding, and decided to be brave in my own clumsy way. "I'm 34, I said, finally, watching her reaction closely. Her eyes widened slightly, but not in a bad way. "Oh, I didn't expect that," she said, smiling faintly. I laughed, feeling a little relief. I get that a lot. I guess I try not to let it matter too much. She nodded, still looking thoughtful. "It doesn't matter to me," she said softly. "I just like knowing who I'm talking to." And just like that, the tension melted a little. The curiosity in her eyes was replaced with something warmer, something that made my chest ache in a good way. We continued talking, more freely now, our conversation dipping into laughter and shared stories. Jamie kept interrupting with demands for chocolate or to show me a drawing he made, but even that didn't break the moment. By the time we left the cafe, I felt a strange mixture of excitement and fear. I wanted to ask her out for real, to see if this spark between us could turn into something more, but I was terrified of overstepping, of scaring her away, or worse, of embarrassing myself in front of her again. As we walked out, she glanced at me and smiled. "See you around?" she asked, and my heart nearly jumped out of my chest. "Definitely," I said, trying to sound casual, but I couldn't stop the grin from spreading across my face. And as we walked away, Jamie holding my hand and chattering about croissants, I realized something had shifted, something important, something that could change my life in ways I wasn't ready for, but secretly, I hoped I was. Friday night came faster than I expected. I spent the whole afternoon trying to look presentable, which is harder than it sounds when you've been living in dad mode for weeks straight. Jamie was at his grandma's for the evening, and for the first time in a long time, I had a few hours to myself. I paced in front of the mirror, straightening my shirt for what felt like the 10th time, and muttered under my breath, "Don't mess this up." When I arrived at the restaurant, she was already there, sitting at a quiet table in the corner. She looked even more beautiful than I remembered, wearing a simple dress that somehow made her glow without trying. My chest tightened, and for a second I considered turning around and running, but I knew I couldn't, not tonight. "Hey," I said, sliding into the seat across from her. "Hey," she replied, smiling that same smile that had haunted my thoughts all week. We ordered drinks, and the conversation started easily, like we'd known each other far longer than a few coffee encounters. She laughed at my stories, and I laughed at hers, and slowly the nervousness melted away. For the first time in months, I felt completely present, completely seen. Then, over dessert, she leaned closer. "I have to ask," she said, her voice teasing but gentle. Did you really think I'd let you off easy about your age?" I laughed, a little sheepishly. "I was scared," I admitted. "I thought maybe it was going to ruin everything before it even started." Her eyes softened. "It didn't. Honestly, I think it makes you more real, more human, and I like that." My heart skipped. Real. Human. She didn't care about the numbers. She cared about me. Me. A single dad, juggling life, messy hair, and all my insecurities. And somehow that was enough. Dinner ended too quickly, but neither of us wanted the night to be over. We walked slowly back to our cars, laughing at small jokes, teasing each other gently. When we reached her car, I felt that familiar nervous energy, wanting to reach out, wanting to touch her hand, but unsure if it was too soon. She looked up at me, eyes warm. "I had a really nice time," she said softly. "Me too," I replied, my voice barely above a whisper. "I want to see you again." Her smile widened. "I'd like that." Then, without thinking, I gently took her hand in mine. She didn't pull away. Instead, she squeezed it lightly, and for a moment, everything else, the past heartbreaks, the awkward coffee moments, the fear, disappeared. It was just us, two people standing in the cool night, taking a chance on something new. As I drove home that night, I couldn't stop smiling. I thought about Jamie, about how excited he would be to meet someone who made me this happy. I thought about her, about that little wave in the cafe that had started it all. And I realized something important. Love doesn't care about perfect timing, or past mistakes, or even age. Love shows up when it's ready, and if you're brave enough to reach for it, it can change everything. I knew this was only the beginning. There would be challenges, and there would be moments of doubt, but as I parked my car and walked into my quiet apartment, I felt a peace I hadn't felt in years. I had taken a leap, faced my fear, and found someone worth it. And for the first time, I felt like maybe, just maybe, my little chaotic life was about to become something extraordinary. The next few days, I couldn't stop thinking about her. Every little thing reminded me of that cafe, the way the sunlight caught her hair, her laugh, the way she looked at me like she already knew my secrets. I found myself checking my phone more than usual, hoping maybe she'd text, but there was nothing. Just the normal chaos of parenting and work. And still, I couldn't shake the feeling that something big was about to happen. Then, on a Thursday afternoon, it did. Jamie had a play date at the park, and I spotted her sitting on a bench near the swings, reading a book. My heart leapt. I wasn't sure if it was courage or sheer luck, but I found myself walking toward her, Jamie skipping beside me. "Hey," I said, trying to sound casual while my stomach did cartwheels. She looked up, her eyes lighting up like sunlight breaking through clouds. "Hey, fancy seeing you here," she said, closing her book. I laughed, a little nervous. "Yeah, I guess the city is smaller than I thought." She smiled, and I could feel it, this warm, gentle pull toward her that I couldn't resist. "So, you come here often with your son?" she asked, teasing just a little. "Only when he insists on being the park mayor," I said, glancing at Jamie, who was already running toward the swings. "And today, apparently, he has a very important appointment." We both laughed, and just like that, the tension from before seemed to vanish. I realized that being around her made the chaos of my life feel lighter, somehow manageable. As we walked slowly through the park, talking about everything and nothing, I finally felt brave enough to ask the question that had been burning in my mind since that first coffee. "Do you want to maybe have dinner sometime? Just the two of us?" Her eyes widened slightly, and I could see her hesitation. My heart sank for a moment. I'd imagined this conversation hundreds of times, and now that it was actually happening, I felt every bit of fear I'd been carrying. I don't know," she said softly. "I mean, I'd like to, but you're a dad, and I don't want to complicate things." I stopped walking, turning to face her fully. "Look, I get it. Being a single dad isn't exactly easy, but I promise I'm trying to do this right. I want to get to know you, and if that scares you, I understand, but I think it could be something really good." She studied me for a long moment, her expression softening. "You're different from anyone I've met, she admitted. "And yes, I want to know more. I need to be sure this isn't just a passing thing." I nodded, understanding completely. I'm not looking for passing. I'm looking for real. And I know that might sound weird, but I'm serious. Her lips curved into a small, hesitant smile. "Okay," she said finally. "Dinner sounds nice." I felt a wave of relief wash over me. "Great," I said, trying to hide my excitement. "How about Friday?" "Friday works," she said, and her smile grew warmer, more genuine. "But only if you promise not to embarrass yourself in public again." I laughed, the sound lighter than it had been in weeks. "Deal. I'll try my best." As we parted ways that day, I couldn't stop smiling. Walking back home with Jamie, I felt a strange mixture of excitement and nervousness. I was about to step into a new chapter of my life, one that was uncertain but thrilling. And for the first time in a long time, I allowed myself to hope. That night, as Jamie slept, I found myself staring at my phone, wondering if she'd text, wondering what our dinner would be like. Would it be awkward? Would we laugh? Would I finally be able to tell her everything? The part of me that was scared, the part that was lonely, the part that had been waiting for someone like her. I didn't have the answers, but I had a feeling that maybe, just maybe, this was the beginning of something unforgettable.